In this exercise, we're going to write an application to process a stream of random integers coming from an external source. So, once we have our Stream Processor Studio open in our web browser, the first thing to do is to create a new CD application. Let's call this application random integer application, and let's set as description random integer processor application. Then we can remove the command and we can save this file with the suggested name. The first thing we need to define is to define our stream of random integers. So to do that, we can use define stream, and as name for this stream we can set random int, and this stream has actually to have the random value being processed, which is of type int. Let's set a sink for this stream with type log. This means that every time that an integer will be observed in this stream, this information will be logged in the console. Let's save again this application with Ctrl S, and let's test it. The first test, the first way of testing an application is by using the simulator available in the Stream Processor Studio. So we start our application, and then we can open from the sidebar the event simulator. In here we can select our application, we have to select the stream name, and here we need to set the value that we want to send to this stream. So let's try sending the value 42, and when you click send, you see that this information is logged on the console of the application, and this is the event that has been received. So a new event with this given timestamp, and the data observed is the number 42. So now let's say that we want to fill events into this stream from an external source. So we need to associate with this stream with a different source, and the source that we want to define is an HTTP source. And to define an HTTP resource, we need to set the URL on which our application will be listening for events. So to do that, we need to set the receiver.url parameter, and let's set this to HTTP localhost port, for example 8081, and then we have to define the actual endpoint for our connection, let's say random int. In addition to that, we need to set how to map the information that will be received at this endpoint, how to map this information into the stream. To do that, we can use a nested map attribute with type, for example, JSON. This way, the system will open a connection to that URL and will keep listening for new events coming. And whenever a JSON event that matches the structure of the stream will be observed, a new event will be thrown into the stream. So let's save the application and let's start it. We can also clear the console to be sure that no event, no other information is shown down there. Let's test our stream by sending some data from the command line. To do that, we can use the curl application, curl, and in particular we need to set some parameters because Stream Processor Studios, the HTTP source, accepts HTTP post commands. So we need to set our curl application. We need to set the command to post with -X post. Then we need to set the endpoint for the connection. So HTTP localhost 8081/random int. Then we need to specify that in the header of our call that we are sending a JSON content. So -h content type application JSON, and then finally we need to specify the data. So -d, and then our JSON content value 33. This way we're sending as payload the JSON fragment value with value 33 as an application JSON with application JSON header as well. So now when I'm hitting enter, this information will be sent to the stream processor environment. And indeed you see down here that this event has been received with the proper value set for the random for the value of the stream. Let's now connect this stream of random integers to values that are coming from a REST application. So if you open the website random.org, this website allows you to generate random numbers or random passwords or different kind of random services. And if you scroll down to web tools and widgets for your web page, you see that they have an HTTP API that allows the generation of random values. In particular, in the example section down here, you see that by requesting this URL, you will get a series of random integers. So by changing the parameters here and asking for just one number with minimum value 1 and maximum value 100, this URL will produce at each request a new random value. And this value is random in the sense that it is not coming from our machine. So now we would like to connect this service to our stream. And to do that, we will write a Python script that will continuously query this service and connect it to our application. So I have created a file called generator.py, and in this file what we need to do is a never-ending loop, so while true, and in here we want to get our random value from the URL. So random has the URL lib2.url open read.strip, so we want to get rid of all the intermediate values, and we need the URL, so I will copy the URL and I will paste it in here. Now of course we need to import URL lib2 as well. Now inside this R&D variable we will have the random value generated from that from the request to that URL. Let's print these R&D, and we also want to set a timeout to until the next request, so until the next iteration of the loop is happening. We can do that with time.sleep, let's say for 0.5 seconds, and of course we need to import time as well. Let's test this script by calling python.generator.py, and now you see that we're printing this sequence of random numbers that are actually coming as result of the call to that URL. The next step we want to achieve is to connect somehow our Python application not only to consume the values coming from being generated from that URL call, but we want to forward these values to our stream processor application. So to do that, we need to create a request, URL lib2.request, and we need to set the endpoint of our stream processor application, which is http localhost 8081/randomint, and again we need to set as the content type of our request to application JSON. So request.add header content type application/JSON. And finally we want to process our request with URL lib2.url open with our request, and in addition we want to provide some data. So we need actually to define our data here, and data has to be a JSON value structured with one attribute, value, and the integer representation of the random variable. So now we can provide a JSON.dumps of our data. We need of course to import JSON as well, and we can just read the result, and since we are providing some data, by default the request will be a post request. So now we can save, and if we go back to our application and we run our script again, we see that some values are printed, and if we open our stream processor, you see that we're now processing our we're receiving all our values from the script. So these values are actually coming from an external URL request, and we're using a Python script to forward these requests to the to our stream processor application. Now that we have properly connected the stream random int with external calls to a URL, let's do some simple event processing within our stream processor studio. So in particular, we do not want to log the values on this random int anymore, but instead we want to define two additional streams, one that is receiving the values above 50 and another that is receiving the values below 50. So we can do that by defining the two streams. Define stream random int below 50, and this is also receiving an integer value, and another stream called random int above 50, which is also receiving a random integer. And now we want to log these two streams on the console. So we can set a sync with type log. For both of these. So now we need to define two queries to process the values that are coming from the random int stream in order to somehow forward the value to either of these two new streams that we just defined. So let's first define the query to send data to the above 50 stream. So from random int, whenever the value is above 50, we want to select the value itself and insert it into random int above 50. What we're stating with this query is that every time from random int we observe a value above 50, then we want to select such value and we want to add this value, we want to send this value into the stream random int above 50. Symmetrical case for random int below 50. So from random int, when value is below 50, select value and insert it into random int below 50. So of course now we are forwarding all the values that are not 50 to these two streams, one with values below, one with value above, and you see that we're actually logging both these two. So we have two things connected to these two streams. So we will now should observe in our console values that are coming, all the values that are coming referring to the corresponding stream, except for the value that are exactly 50, because we're discarding them and the original stream is not connected to a sync anymore. So if we save this file and we start our application, then we can start again our Python script, and you will see that the values are now coming through as they're being generated, and you see that now we have the two streams random int below 50 and random int above 50 that are receiving the corresponding events. We can also inspect the graphical representation, and from here you could see that indeed from the HTTP source we're sending these events into this stream called random int, and then we have two queries consuming the events of this random int, and these queries are actually feeding events to these two other streams, random int above 50 and below 50, and both these two streams are connected to two different sinks that are just logging the information on the console.